issues. Who's your best speaker for the whole debate?
Who's first?
We won't call it a winner, but
Best
by the
speaker.
standards of what you guys usually do as adjudicators, who did best on the standards of matter, manner, and method? Glenn.
I called all rounds for Grace. I think, based on what we were talking about earlier, manner, matter, method, I had her on top for all segments of that debate. Why? Matter-wise, she had the statistics down pat. We were talking about how she seemed to have memorized everything. She came prepared. The manner came across as surprising, to say the least.
What was surprising?
She was more pointed in this debate than the first debate. I was talking about how I was pleasantly surprised about the sneaky trap question that she raised against Secretary Rojas in round 2, although I understand that Nick's here didn't appreciate that much. Method-wise, I think she split her strategy well. Round 1, she was showing what she knew. Round 2, she was showing the weakness of the other candidates, or what she wanted to know. And in the closing, she said something about what she can deliver for Cebu and for Iloilo and the rest of Visayas. So I think she played a good strategy throughout the debate. So I had her taking best speaker.
Was it a close decision? Was there anyone who could possibly have beaten her?
No, but in the different segments, I had other candidates as placing second.
Alright.
Like in the first round, earlier rounds, I had VP Binay placing second. I had Secretary Rojas placing second in the Q&A because of the quality of questions that we were talking about as well. And at the times where Mayor Duterte was inserting himself, he was effective. So it was really a toss-up on the other rounds.
Okay. Joanne?
Okay, so I gave all 2 rounds to Grace Poe as well. I don't know if the Supreme Court decision allowing her to run and declaring her eligible to run gave her a confidence boost. Because the Grace Poe that I saw today was confident and acted like a front runner. So the way she answered the questions, before maybe she had a Damocles sword hanging over her head because she didn't know if she would be allowed to run. But now, that's gone. And so the way she came out, she was aggressive. She was on point with her facts and figures. I noticed this with the first debate. She was also like that in the second debate.
But this time more on point.
More on point and more aggressive.
Okay.
We pointed out earlier the sneaky question that she posed to Maros that assumed that Maros was both incompetent and part of the Tuwid na Daan myth. And so that's why he wasn't part of Mama Sapano. So I thought she was very, very sneaky but effective, to me at least. The FOI, I thought she also inserted there that this was not a real priority of the administration, saying that the administration was engaged in doublespeak. That is aggressive behavior on the part of Grace Poe. So I thought that on manner, matter, and method, she won. And,
Gives it to Grace. Nicole?
Yes, it's a consensus. I'm also giving it to Grace Poe. Just to add to what they said, ultimately, what is this debate for, right? This is a litmus test to how our commander-in-chief looks like. This is a litmus test to how our next president will deliver the State of the Nation address, right? We have to think big. And Grace Poe's performance, I think, convinced us that she can be a commander-in-chief. She can be equally assertive. She has a multilateralist view to the world, although Joanne said she was very unsatisfied with her Spratley's response. She can be aggressive, but also very data-driven. In terms of matter, manner, and method, I think this is the kind of public speaker that we can see in national context for the next 6 years, as far as this debate is concerned. Of course, there are some low points. So we already talked about the Coco Levy issue. We talked about her, I personally didn't like the sneaky question to Marojas. But also, it's a big disappointment on how, for divorce, for example, it's a woman's issue. I was expecting, compared to the other candidates, I think it's not a surprise that from a debater's perspective, Grace Poe took this debate.
Let's go back to that, a debater's perspective. What does that mean? Because the online community may or may not agree with you. For them, Duterte took this debate, at least from what we were seeing earlier. What is a debater's perspective versus the perspective of your average, reasonable person who is not a debater, which is the only difference?
Well, I don't want to generalize basically between a debater and an average reasonable person, but I think we can look at it as having different standards by which we judge a debate. So obviously we were looking at what we said, the 3Ms, manner, matter, method. But there are certain candidates, like what you said, Mayor Duterte, Pat. He's basically unrankable or unjudgeable in a debate. And I say this in a positive notion, if you think about,
Absolutely.
you think about it in another manner. Because, for instance, he says, I'm not here to debate about policy. If the other candidates have a good policy, I can adopt it. I'll just make sure I implement it better. And that's not going to work in a regular debate. You can't start conceding everything and say, you're just going to do
Or
it better.
choosing not to ask questions
That's
or not
really his
answer them.
selling point.
Yeah.
That's his selling point. His selling point is, I have the political will, I have the support, I can get things done in 3 to 6 months, and if you give me the keys to this country, then I'm going to pull it off. You ask that question, Pat, because we are judging this from a debater's perspective, but in the greater scheme of things, maybe everyone else will act from a different perspective.
Which the next question follows from. Is it, you said earlier, Grace Poe is the most presidential, the best public speaker, at least for the purposes of this debate,
Yes.
will be good for this country. Is it reasonable to say that the winner or best speaker of a debate should be the next president? Is this a good standard for deciding on who your chief executive should be?
Not necessarily, although it is a good indicator, for example, of how a presidential candidate reasons, the logic, the thought process, how someone responds under pressure. So these are important considerations. But I think just to go back again to the Mayor Duterte example, right? Part of the Duterte mystique is that he doesn't talk much. He will just make these promises in 3 to 6 months. When you start unpacking that, when you start explaining that, it reduces the mystique because he is about action, he's not about talk. So if that's the kind of politics you're after, if you're after the politics of the I will, don't ask questions, I will not explain this to you, I will just do it, then maybe looking at the debate is not the best way for you to judge a candidate if you are partial to that kind of leadership. So I guess in a sense, personally, my choice is to take debate seriously because it is precisely with what they said in the debates that we can hold them accountable later on when they're in office.
Or perhaps